Yesterday, we set out to find the very best stats for Guan Yu. Is it attack, defense, or health? And instead, we learned something far more important that literally most players do not understand about the way Guan Yu works, where you can go from literally getting a 2-for-1 value trade to getting yourself 2-for-1. That's right, this is a 100% flip in the result. How does that happen? It is not a clickbait title that what you don't know about Guan Yu can and will be used against you. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, a sponsored content creator for Rise of Kingdoms, and earlier this morning, I put a poll out to every one of you who subscribed to the channel. And by the way, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and throw a like on here, subscribe to the channel, and let me show you this poll asking about Guan Yu's active skill, because Guan Yu is an amazing infantry commander. He's top tier, one of the best, and everybody ought to understand how he works, right? Well, it turns out most people don't know, and I'm in that 95% of people who does not know how Guan Yu's active skill with the silence effect actually works. Because if you were wondering, when does Guan Yu's silence take place? It is not the turn where Guan Yu casts his active skill. It is not the turn after Guan Yu has cast his active skill. But it is 2 turns later. And it turns out that this is a very big deal. It is a really big deal, influencing your gear, influencing your talents, and basically every way that you're going to use your Guan Yu if you want to be strategic about how you play with him. So let me show you really quickly exactly how that works with the silencing mechanic, because it is so strange, I did not expect it. If we look here at the battle log, you can see, and I'll prove this to you, that the Guan Yu of the enemy side went a turn faster than I did. Now that in and of itself is weird, and we're going to talk about that in a second as well. However, you can see that they cast their silence on me, but the very next turn, I used my active skill. So even on the next turn, the silence had not been applied to me yet. But there's more. Then I don't use my second skill, my Alexander the Great skill, until more than 3 turns later. In other words, the silence effect took place not the turn that the enemy Guan Yu used their active skill, not the turn after, but for the subsequent 3 turns. It starts 2 turns later. Now you may think, Chisgule, why is that such a big deal? Why are you making such a big deal out of the Alexander the Great having his active skill fire later, right? Your secondary commander is firing later. So what? Here's the so what. First of all, I continue to generate rage after I have used my active skill. Okay? This is really important. So if you don't silence me more than 2 turns ahead of when I'm going to use my first skill, then I am going to continue to generate rage toward my next skill cycle. But it gets way worse if you are battling another Guan Alex. Why does it get way worse? Because we need to understand what Alexander the Great's active skill is doing. Here is when Alexander the Great is using his active skill, and here is when my rage bar, 2 turns later, is full for Guan Yu to go again. This is important. Let me show you why. If you look at Alexander the Great's active skill, when he is expertised, he is going to make it so that the target is taking 30% increased damage. Do you see where this is going? So Guan Yu is going to go 2 turns after this 30% damage debuff is applied to the enemy. So they are going to take 30% more damage from Guan Yu's 2,000 damage factor active skill. And because Guan Yu just got a shield, he's going to do 15% more skill damage. Literally, you are doing like double the red numbers in an attack after this weird silencing delay of Alexander the Great happens. And it is a massive swing in damage. That is why a fight will go from I am 2-for-1ing you to now you are 2-for-1ing me, because of literally that timing. It is that big of a deal. But there is more. You see, something funky was happening in that report. Because my build on Guan Yu, by the way, let me show you my build. My build on Guan Yu generates rage. I have feral nature. Cortex, the person I was battling against, does not have feral nature. So how in the world did Cortex go a turn before I did? I want you to think about that for a second. How is it even conceivable that when I have the build that generates more rage, literally, same combo, how in the world is Cortex going before me? I'll put his build up on the screen. He doesn't have feral nature. I do. We have otherwise very similar talents. Why is it that in this battle log, he uses his active skills right here, a turn before me? And that is because of a mechanic that many people do not understand in Rise of Kingdoms, which is that when you are losing a fight, for mystery reasons, you generate more rage. It doesn't say this in-game anywhere to my knowledge, but when you are losing a fight, and you can see he is losing right up over here. It's right over here in the stats, right? I'm losing 1,504. He's losing 1,530. He's losing more than me by just a little. And apparently, that is enough to offset the benefit of not only the possibility of feral nature giving me 100 extra rage and my firing off a turn sooner, but it is enough rage for him to go a full turn sooner than me, creating a situation that is actually worse for him. Because now the timing of the Alexander the Great is just before my Guan goes, and I am wrecking him. And the same went the other way when, I was actually losing the fight, and he would win by more. So the way to hard counter another Guan Alex in the open field is literally with another Guan Alex, except you want to be just slightly stronger than the other one. Now, in these tests, the thing we were actually trying to prove that we didn't all really, I think, work on is as at least, or I don't think this is the most important takeaway. We were just trying to prove what's the better stat, health, defense, or attack on Guan Yu, right? That would be really interesting to know for Guan Alex specifically. And I didn't think much of it when I was like, yeah, I'll use Guan Alex, you use Guan Alex. Like, that's a real combo I'm using. You're using a real combo. It represents a real situation. Like, it's a popular combo. So why not? Well, we learned this whole silence thing gets really, really weird. And I'll say that there probably are still some things that we can learn, not only about rage gen, which we just talked about, not only about the timing of Guan Yu's active skill, which is extremely important. And I want to talk about that now before I get to the results for attack, defense, and health, which is that I'm not so sure that the talent feral nature is all that helpful. In other words, if you have feral nature, rarely did I go 2 turns ahead of Cortex in order to be able to actually stop him from using his active skill cycle at all. In fact, more often than not, feral nature put me on the worse side of this whole silencing of their secondary commander. In other words, if you're battling against an opponent that has a secondary commander that is going to buff their march or debuff your march so that you take more damage, it is actually really bad to fire off your active skill like this, 1 turn before the enemy, because their secondary skill is going to get delayed until very close to when they're going to use their active skill all over again. And they're going to get their whole skill cycle all over again. So for me, feral nature is just really confusing as a talent right now. I'm actually just not sure if it's good or if it's bad. But what I can say is that if you combine feral nature talent with an accessory like the Horn of Fury, now I think you're really cooking with gas. I think the two of these combined are extremely powerful on Guan specifically. And I would probably not even use Horn of Fury without also having the feral nature, because you want to go before the opponent can get their active skill cycle going at all. That way you stop them from generating rage, and now you've really profoundly harmed their ability to be effective in combat. That would be my assumption, but we would have to do, honestly, a lot more testing to figure that out. But on the topic of testing, we ran literally 60 trials of Guan and Alex, using a 36.5% stat swap from attack to defense to health. And I feel like the results are all weird, and I'm not even sure they're worth anything because of this whole strange dynamic where literally one moment I would get a 2-for-1 and the next he would be 2-for-1ing me. However, there is some patterns that I think does follow with what we understand of attack and defense and health, which is that we know that there are diminishing returns on stats. The less of a stat you have, the more valuable it is. And because of that, health is always going to be an extremely valuable stat if what you want is efficiency. In other words, a really nice trade, something that looks more like this. And the reason that you want health is that Alliance technology gives attack and defense, it doesn't give health. Season of Conquest technology, to my knowledge, doesn't give health, it just gives attack and defense. And so therefore, you will find yourselves with health being the lowest stat almost always. The exception will be commanders that have a lot of inherent health put onto them. But we know that commanders like Guan and Alex, by the way, do a lot of attack. Guan Yu gives 30% infantry attack. Alexander the Great is going to give you a solid 30% infantry attack, then an additional 40%, except for the 2 seconds or so that your shield is going to be active before it gets knocked off you, where that is swapped to 30% defense instead of 30% attack. But even then, grand total, you have more attack simply because of Guan Yu's skill right over here. Although I'm very low confidence that these results, which I'll flash up onto the screen now, are representative of the big picture, and I'll give you the detailed summary in just a second. This is what you're looking at is every result and every trial. You can see that when I used attack, I did the worst by a long shot. Like, it's not even close. And defense was better, and health was the best. And the thing that's weird about trying to gauge the effectiveness of attack here is that although Guan Yu really does a very solid amount of damage factor, it's 2,000 damage factor to the target, and he's got more damage factor on his 4th skill. Attack boosts the amount of damage you do from these skills, which is phenomenal. The problem is that Alexander the Great does not have an active skill tied to the rage generation. It's just a random chance to do a solid amount of damage factor. But because of this, he doesn't do quite as much skill damage as you might have thought. And I honestly am not sure how much I trust these results to say, oh yeah, attack and defense and health, this is their relationship. But if it is right, or if it's at least directionally correct, what this would mean is that health is definitely the more efficient play. Although the duration of the fight was longest with health by a long shot at 113 seconds, 100 seconds if you had defense stacked, and 96 seconds if you had attack, the remaining units were way better if you have health. On average, it was 44,841 compared to 31,000 for defense, and I lost by 5,000 units on average if I had attack, which is pretty bad. That's pretty bad. If I boosted health, my trade ratio was 0.74. In other words, for every unit the enemy lost, I lost 0.74. That's really good. You're doing very well in that situation. For defense, it was 0.85, and for attack, it was 1.06. For every unit they lost, I lost more than them. That's bad. So it would seem like health would be the better stat here. But the thing that's really weird for this situation specifically is that, A, I'm not really measuring the area of effect damage that I'd be doing. But at the same time, I also will be taking area of effect damage, which would make defense and health more valuable too. So there's an argument that could be said that maybe these results actually are fairly representative of what a real situation would be, in which case health is the best stat. And what would that mean? Because health was the best stat, not by a little bit, but compared to attack, oh my God, it was a lot better than attack. There are 2 items only for which this is relevant for infantry, unfortunately. Those 2 items are these legs, the Karak's Humility, which are God tier equipment. You put Karak's Humility on your Guan Yu and don't think about upgrading it until you've basically upgraded every other piece of gear. Literally. The only exception, perhaps, would be the weapon. How does a Sakura Fubuki, special talented, at 17% attack, compare to the Gatekeeper's Shield, which will give you 10.5% health? I would make the argument that the Sakura Fubuki is still better. It is nearly double the amount of stats, and the attack was not twice as good as health. However, the amount of gain you're getting, I think, is going to be very small over a Gatekeeper Shield to be using a Sakura Fubuki, which is the 17% of stats. The problem with a Sakura Fubuki is that if we go look at the amount of materials it takes to craft it, we're talking about the equivalent of 25 legendary materials. That is 100 epic materials. So I would make the argument that if you're going to go and craft something, that you probably should instead craft something else where you will get more incremental gain for the 100 materials that you're committing to that path. In fact, if you haven't made the Karak's Humility legs, that would be a good activity to go and prioritize. The other gear that you could make probably is going to give you a greater stat gain, but I do think that the special talented Sakura is going to surpass the Gatekeeper Shield for the Guan Alex combo specifically, just not by enough that I would make that a priority. In terms of city skins and tokens, if these results are accurate, then I would say yes, a defense token is the way to go over an attack token. And I would also say that in terms of city skins, the skins that give you health are really, really strong, specifically for your Guan Alex combo and infantry in general. And so I would say the Age of Devotion is a top tier city skin, especially because you're losing cavalry attack and defense, but you're gaining infantry health. And health is a better stat generally, I would say, across the board. So the significance of that, by the way, is that if you haven't seen my other videos recently, I'll let you know now that if you look here, you can see that the 2021 Spring Event Series, most likely the Zenith of Power, is going to give you an opportunity to get the Age of Devotion. Well, this is going to be a highly coveted city skin for sure. And it is very strong. It is very, very strong. I would argue possibly the best infantry city skin in the game, and by a long shot. Now, of course, I got to go. I'm not actually in this video reviewing every single city skin to go and compare, but this is looking really good. The other city skin, by the way, in the upcoming Zenith of Power is the Saints Halo. We know that because we see 2021 Spring Events. How about that? So to draw some conclusions here, and I know that this was a lot of information that I threw at you, and it honestly was not the video I was expecting to make today, but here's what you need to know, okay, about Guan Yu. First and foremost, the silence does not take place on the turn that he uses his active skill or the turn after. It takes place 2 turns after, which means that you want to be careful about things like feral nature that are going to help you generate more rage, because you're going to potentially end up in a situation where you help them by silencing them, not hurting them, because you're only stopping their second commander's active skill from firing off rather than their first and their second. And if the second commander is going to buff their unit, then they are going to make their whole next skill cycle really, really strong, which is terrifying. If you can use both Feral Nature and the Horn on Guan, I think that would be extremely strong for actually silencing your opponent before they use any skills at all and preventing them from generating rage. This is a big deal. For me, this maybe shifts my prioritization of making the Horn, and specifically, if I have the opportunity, Special Talented Infantry, and put it on my Guan. In addition, I think that any Guan combo, if you want to draw any conclusions about how they're going to perform, you would need to test extensively. Because look, I can show you 2 reports. If I did 1 test with a Guan, how do you know which one you're looking at? Is this representative of reality? Or is this representative of reality? Which one is it? In one, I 2 for 1, and the other, I got 2 for 1. Complete opposite result. Any testing with Guan, you would need to test extensively, more than once, many times, in order to get a true sense of how it's actually performing. In addition, we demonstrated how if you are losing a fight, you actually generate more rage, which is very, very weird. For mystery reasons, you generate more rage. You can see it here. They fire off their active skill a turn sooner. It's weird. In addition, in this video, we've concluded that the last gear you would replace on your Guan and Alex is going to be your health gear. Your health gear is extremely valuable. That comes, again, primarily in the form of the Gatekeeper Shield, the Karak's Humility, and I suppose if you were using it, it would be pretty reasonable to have Windswept Bracers. Those also give health. Those would be a low priority to replace too. And the last thing we can say about Guan and Alex is that if you see another Guan Alex on the field, if you've got the stronger one or you think you do, you should take that fight because you're not going to win by a little. You're going to win by a lot. If you like this video, do me a huge favor. Throw a like onto here and consider subscribing for more insane testing, commander tips, tricks, and more. And if you're looking for more testing about commanders, I'll throw a couple cards up in the top where we do some testing for Attila and Takeda, where we do some testing for archers as well to show what stats are best for them. And let me tell you, this stuff is really tricky and it's hard to prove, but I think we're headed in the right direction with some of these learnings. I'll be eager to see your thoughts down below in the comments. And in particular, if you think there is a better test to show the difference in stats between Guan and Alex and the choices you could be making there, I would be very eager to run it. In fact, I probably will be looking to do that in the next couple days. And I'll be eager to see if it's consistent with what I've shown here. Until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom. Oh, hello. You're still here. If you enjoyed this video, do me that huge favor of throwing a like on this. This took me like 10 times as long, like 5 to 10 times as long as a normal video. I mean, no joke. This was hours of testing, literally thousands of gems on Ark of Osiris testing. So if you could do me that favor and throw a like on here. Also, huge thank you to Cortex for spending a ton of time with me on this. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And join my Discord, discord.gg/Chisgule. Check it out, baby. Links in the description of every video. Thanks.